jump to the criticism or the questioning of LeBron. But once I actually just, before we hit record on here, I just took a moment and glanced at Gilbert Arenas' his post on Instagram. It's a very thorough assessment of LeBron that I had to shut up. It kind of changed what we were going to talk about here.
He's not wrong. He points out a lot of things, some of which I think people have known for a while.
Right.
But I think he delved into things that I've not heard, at least loudly discussed.
Right.
But agree with. LeBron does play a very north to south game.
Right.
He's not laterally very quick. And he doesn't have a great first step. Gilbert is very correct in the assessment that most of his moves occur at top speed. And when he goes for a spin move, once he hits the paint, it is slow. Like, in comparison to guys like you'll never see a LeBron highlight where he's doing a spin off of somebody and then going under for the reverse layup. You don't see him doing that. And I think part of it is because when he does it, it's not as flashy.
Right.
It's very slow in comparison to your smaller guys. So there's definitely, and I've always said that LeBron gets treated like he's a center for his calls. He
right.
he gives out so much punishment and doesn't get called for it. And some of that is because when he's coming in there, he's a big load. Gilbert said something to the effect of he's more like a train
right.
than a cheetah.
Right.
Meaning he's not quick off the jump, but once he gets to that top speed, he's very hard to stop.
He said he did mention that he questioned his lateral movement. He said that he plays more upright than most players and that he doesn't bend at the knees a lot. But, I mean, we have to, again, take into consideration, this is a 6'8", 6'9" guy doing this from the beginning. So, I've always felt that, and you being a Pistons fan, I remember back in the day that the best play for the Showtime Lakers for Magic Johnson was to come down, get into his drive, and effectively whirlwind through 3 or 4 guys, cause however many people to go to the ground. They bounce off of him, and then he just shoots a layup. And like you said, to me, that was a bonus. There's no stat for it. But the fact that LeBron can relentlessly go to the hoop whenever he wants to, never having to worry about drawing a personal foul or player control, that's a bonus in itself.
Yeah.
Because most players can't drive, especially in the college level, you can't continuously drive to the bucket because once you leave the ground, I mean, they try to straighten up that personal space or whatever, you
right.
can't slide in. But a lot of guys, some defenses, especially Duke, they use your driving ability to you and draw you into driving,
right.
and then they use it against you. So
they try to catch a lot of charges.
Catch the charges, and so when that takes away part of your game, getting the ball to the glass or getting a dunk or getting a comfortable shot, versus now maybe you got to get into the lane, do a step back, or dump the ball off.
Right.
LeBron has just never had to worry about that.
Best example of that as a Pistons fan, that series against the Pistons right before they went, what was that? That was the
06.
05, 06 season. When he rambled off 30 straight points.
Yeah.
That's all he did. He puts his head down and just goes. He just drives. He's not looking at the basket. He knows it's in front of him. He just wants to feel the guys. He just wants to hit. He wants to feel that contact and then make his move.
Right.
There's not very many other guys, if any, that can do that get away with that in the league.
So to his point, though, do you think that I think LeBron's setup move is not really built on his first 2 steps, but I think he does do a bit of a change of direction that gets players, that positions them to where he can get around them. But do you just chalk that up then to the fact that a lot of NBA defenders can get lazy over the course of a 48-minute game, and that's really not LeBron's fault? It's their, it's defenders' commitment to playing, to moving their feet.
Yeah. I think it's probably both. I think that more committed defenders do know his tendencies. LeBron does a lot of jab steps.
Yeah, he does.
He does a lot of jab steps from the top or from the top left.
Him and Melo do a lot of that. Both.
Absolutely. And once he started moving, I think what confuses defenders, which is, look, I'm not saying that LeBron's not great. I do agree with Gil's overall assessment that he can be selfish, but that's part of what makes him a great player. I think what freezes defenders with LeBron is that they don't know if he's looking to kick or finish.
Right.
And so even though he may not be at breakneck speed once he's in that move, you don't know if he's going to kick to the left, find a guy in the corner, or if he's really trying to just get to the bucket. And so I think that defenders, because generally you want to shade a guy a certain direction.
Right.
Generally. And even LeBron, he's got tendencies that guys try to expose, but you never know. He's just as fine passing the ball. So I don't think that is a detriment. Do I think he should be more aggressive? Yeah, but again, you don't want him to not be who he is. You couldn't tell Magic to just not pass the ball.
Right.
So,
and I think this year with the lineup, if they stay healthy, I really think this is a moot point anyway, because he's going to have the cast around him that plays well off of. But what I wanted to get into was what he said. What Gilbert did say was, so he walks into stats without trying, and when forced, he would give you 41, 12, and 8. The finals was the first time in his career he was physically pushed to the limit because he had no one to defer to. And I would just say, I've been saying this for several years before I had a podcast and a platform to say it. I really felt like LeBron is best when he doesn't have to think. When he can just react and do things in the moment and get in the air. And I said it many times, his greatest attribute is he has a motor that we've never seen. He has Dennis Rodman's motor with the handles of Iverson or somebody, or a small guard, and he's the first one up and down the court every time. He's just a full court player. And I just feel like when you push him into a point where he really doesn't have to think about things, he excels. But when he does have to get extremely detailed is when you can kind of thwart his effectiveness a little bit.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He's got a very high basketball IQ, and he probably does perform better in the moment. And some of that may be because he's had to change his style of play since he's been in the league. Like, he had to develop a jumper. He had to start taking outside shots. And so
build a post game.
Yeah, I think you catch some of that hesitance from him sometimes when he's forced to do things that he's only had to do for the past 3 years.
Right. So anyway, check that out. You can, like I said, you can look at the Gilbert Arenas. I think Gilbert Arenas really should start his own scouting service. I mean, if you're going to write him up like that.
It was a very good expose. I was very surprised, or should I say, intrigued that it came right after he got some notoriety for getting kicked out of the fair.
Speaking of old school, well, actually, I'm jumping ahead. Well, actually, since you gave me the perfect dime right there, I'm going to go on and get the layup. I missed the first layup, and then I put it back in, but we scored. Speaking of older players making a reappearing, this week the NBA had its Africa game. I don't know if that was the first one or if that's the first one that's been branded as the Africa game.
It's the first one that they've done to this level. Like, Basketball Without Borders has been over there forever.
Right. So, previous or Hall of Famers, I don't know if Dikembe Mutombo is an NBA Hall of Famer. I'm sure on the college level, collegiate level, he's close. But the Dream, Hakeem Olajuwon at 52 and Dikembe Mutombo at 49 actually donned some uniforms, got on the court, had a couple possessions. Hakeem actually got a block on Utah's Trey Burks, and then went down and did a 52-year-old version of the Dream Shake, yeah, which is one of the most memorable moves in all of NBA history.
It's a signature.
Right, a signature move. When you look at today's bigs, you just wonder why no one's taken from that.
Particularly because so many guys work with Hakeem now.
Exactly. So, I don't know, man. the NBA, I mean the Team Africa, you either had to be of from Africa or second generation. Your parents were from Africa, basically. So the big performance that jumped out to me was Antetokounmpo from Giannis Antetokounmpo from Milwaukee Bucks. In the third quarter, this guy did everything. I mean, he was checking passports, serving popcorn, taping people up. He led the way, I believe, with 22 points. But the NBA team, the world team, as it were, they were able to come back. I believe they opened up the fourth with a 26-2 or 26-4 run. I just was really surprised it was that competitive because while Africa has provided some great bigs throughout the years, they really don't have a lot of well-known ball handlers and perimeter players. So I thought that would kind of be the downfall, is they just didn't have a point guard needed to be a team led by CP3.
Yeah, there was not a legit point guard on their whole team.
So, I mean, speaking of it, to get past it as one of our talking points, I just thought it was a great look for the NBA. There's actually talks of a regular season game being held there, or a series of regular season games. It was in Johannesburg. I thought it was a good look.
Yeah. The NBA, David Stern's mission was to expand the game globally. That was his largest point of emphasis during his tenure. Adam Silver is not going to drop the ball with that. They're just going to continue to try to make the NBA brand more visible overseas. Silvers has talked about the possibility of expansion teams overseas. They just can't get the logistics of it, the travel issues, the back and forth.
Same thing with the NFL.
Yeah. But NBA Without Borders has really blossomed in Africa. They've got generations of players that are now trying to come into the NBA. Basketball is prevalent over there. It's right there on the cusp with soccer or actual European football and what kids want to do there. And so the NBA Africa game was to showcase that progression and also to, I think, just kind of set the stage for what they plan to do in the future.
And the game itself lends itself well to expansion into areas, countries such as some of those on the continent, because it's not one of the sports that requires a lot of money. You don't need you don't need $150, $170 aluminum bat to play, as you would in girls softball or baseball for that matter. So basketball does well over there. Like I said, it was a good look. Getting on before we get into our conclusion, which is our 3 storylines for next season. I also saw an interesting article this week where interesting piece where former player Vin Baker, I believe he was with the Supersonics and the Milwaukee Bucks, man.
Correct, for his heydays.
Right. Vin Baker, 6'11" guy, was able to collect $100 million in salary throughout his playing career.
13 years.
He did kind of shut it down unceremoniously and went away very quietly into the night. He was actually a Jordan brand player. Very
4-time All-Star.
Right.
Got a gold medal with the 2000 Olympic team.
Very accomplished player. But the article actually was about him not struggling, but his pursuits now of becoming a Starbucks manager. And I just thought it was interesting to touch on that before we jump into our conclusion.
Yeah, the Vin Baker quote-unquote story is not very uncommon in the sense that you hear a lot of stories about professional athletes losing it all to some degree from whatever reason. His was different in the sense that this was a guy that was somebody. This is a highly touted prospect coming out of Hartford. He went to, right?
Something like that.
And as we said, like, he 4-time All-Star, 13-year career, but throughout his tenure in the NBA, he had battles with alcoholism.
And we didn't know this.
Right. It was until his last 4 years or so,
right.
Which is really probably when I notably started